Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to your September horoscopes for your zodiac sign. Now, this is how you're going to read for your sign. You're going to read first for your rising sign. If you do not know your rising sign, you want to go on a free 99 website like AstroSeek or astro.com. You punch in your data, your date of birth, location, and time, and then you will see your rising sign, which is also the ascendant. Then you're going to read for your ascendant sign. This is how I do the monthly forecasts because this will give you a bigger picture of where the transits are going through your own personal houses. Now, as a disclaimer, like always, this is based on just your rising sign. There's other things to take into consideration, like if you have any natal placements in and around the degrees that I mention. Another thing to keep in mind is that not all transits will impact you because they just won't. Like, that's why you want to look at the degree of the transit and if you have any placements around that specific transit. Try not to get into this mindset of, is this good or bad? Because only you can perceive of something as good or bad. Something that might be a challenging aspect for me or its transit might actually be something that ends up being a blessing in disguise later on. So I try not to say what is good or bad. I'll say, this is an auspicious day to start something. This might bring blessings down the road. This is a challenging transit that you might need to lean into, or you might be triggered on this day. That's how I try to do the forecast so that you are prepared and you're not blindsided by certain things that might happen. You also have to take into consideration your profection year, so your time lord, different like midlife transits. You know, there's people going through their Saturn return right now, which is a different experience than if you weren't going through a Saturn return. Some people are going through their midlife transits. They're going through their simultaneous Pluto and Neptune square. So there's all these different layers to take into consideration when you listen to this. And like I said, collectively, 2025, we're all going through massive changes. We're all being asked to show up in different ways to really work through our own bullshit, to heal our trauma. And then individually, we can narrow that down to certain things that we are going to be focusing on in our own transits. So, if you want to learn more about your own specific natal chart, I am teaching Astrology 101. I opened up my star school that starts October 6th. It's a 12-week class. We meet for 2 hours every Monday between 12 and 2 p.m. And I'm going to teach you how to read your natal chart so that when you listen to the transits and you remember, oh, I have a 5-degree sun in Aries. So then next year, the Saturn and Neptune conjunction in Aries is going to impact me. Stuff like that. It's really important to understand your natal chart when you listen to these transits, because like I said, not all transits are going to impact you. And also not all transits impact people the same way. So that is one way you can go deeper with me. And I mean, obviously you're listening to this. So if you are a Patreon member, you're getting this at the top of the month. If you want to become a Patreon member so that you could receive this in the beginning of the month versus like when it's, we're already going into mid-month, then you can be in the North Node. I believe I call it the North Node tier. It's $10 a month. And you can also listen to the monthly forecast that I do with Stephanie Campos, which we go day by day, every single day of the month. In these monthly transits, I only really talk about the ones that would impact your rising sign, the most important ones. Obviously, the 2 lunations and any of your chart rulers, your planetary ruler changing signs or making significant aspects. If you want to come along with me every week in the forecast where I break it down day by day, that's free 99 on YouTube. But if you want to support my work, you can join the first tier of my Patreon, which you just pay $5. I think it's $5.55 a month to support my work. So that is how to engage with the content of the monthly forecasts. I obviously can't answer all of the questions you have if you are not a Patreon member. This is another benefit of being a member because if you're not a Patreon member and you're watching it in the general public, you're already catching this forecast in like mid-month when I've already, spent a lot of time putting this out for my Patreon members. So they get first priority. And then if you're watching just the clips of it, just know that I post the clips for marketing purposes, but there's a whole month of transits that give context to your experience. Because there were a couple of people that just watched the clips last month and they were like, yeah, but I'm a Libra rising and this Venus Cancer conjunction in my 10th house is not auspicious for me. I just got fired from my job. But if you had watched the full month forecast, I said that Venus and Jupiter, just because they're both benefics, doesn't mean that it's all going to be like rainbows and butterflies. So those are the disclaimers. Thank you so much for being here and thank you so much for supporting my work. Let's get to your sign. Hello, Gemini risings. Welcome to your September horoscope. Thank you for being here. September is a busy month, and your chart ruler is going to change signs from Virgo to Libra. Five planets are changing this month, and we have eclipses. So this month is going to be, it's going to feel like a lot is changing at once, specifically for all the mutable rising signs. I've said this now to Virgo, Pisces, Sagittarius, and yourself, that these eclipses are happening in the angular houses. And because Jupiter and Mercury rule 2 out of the 4 houses in your natal chart, this is going to feel like the Wheel of Fortune, like something is changing. And I mean, I don't doubt that Gemini risings could handle this because you are probably the most adaptable people in the zodiac. So anyway, let's get into it then. On September 1st, Saturn retrograde will re-enter your 10th house of Pisces. So you had a little taste of what Saturn was like, what it was going to be like for you from May until now in your 11th house. So now that Saturn is going back into your 10th house, there's more of a serious tone to your career sector, your job, what you're known for, your public persona, right? Saturn wants 3 things from you. It wants a plan, it wants discipline, and it wants structure. And I would say for a lot of Gemini risings, this might have had to do with like a financial plan, like a financial structure in place so that whatever it is that you are doing in your career, you're being compensated for it, since Saturn rules your 8th house of shared resources and your 9th house of Aquarius. So you're finishing up this story, and if you are a Gemini rising in and around like 24 to 29 degrees, this is going to square you. So it's going to be a little challenging because it's really going to ask you to stop with your side quests for a moment, which is very difficult for a Gemini, and really lock in and get serious about what it is that you're creating for your career. And this is going to be kind of the theme for you in the month of September because the eclipses are happening in your 4th and 10th houses. So the next transit is that on September 2nd, Mercury will ingress into Virgo. So again, another 4th house activation because Virgo is your 4th house of home, foundation, family of origin, parents, and ancestors. So Mercury is in its exaltation and domicile in the sign of Virgo. So you might just get really like curious. You might have questions about your ancestors. You might be traveling to your family of origin. Like if where you live is not actually where your ancestors are from, you might just want to travel there. Because Mercury rules you and the fourth, this is a very important transit for you. This is a very important house for you because whatever you uncover, whatever connections you make, right? That's what I think of Mercury is going to have so much to do with your sense of safety, security, the histories, the stories that brought you to this moment that are going to give you the confidence to have that very public facing Pisces 10th house. But I really like this transit for you. You might get a lot of answers that you might have been wanting, that you've been waiting for, especially on that Cazimi. There's a Cazimi on September 13th. Mercury in Virgo will conjunct the sun at 20 degrees. So if you have your IC there in and around 20 degrees, this could just be this like aha moment download. Oh my God, like this is what I'm meant to do with my life. This is what I'm meant to understand about myself from my parents. I didn't really understand all the stories and histories and decisions that brought me to this moment of my life, but I'm so grateful that I understand that now. Because the fourth house ultimately is the roots, right? It's the roots of our chart. And it's a very important house for us to feel like grounded and anchored into this reality. On September 6th, Uranus stations retrograde at 1 degree of Gemini. So if you are a Virgo rising in and around like 0 to 5 degrees, you would be feeling Uranus on your ascendant like an electric shock, maybe. And I have Uranus natally on my ascendant, so I'm kind of used to this energy. Now, Uranus will transit your first house for about 8 years. It was previously in your 12th house for 12 years. I mean, not since 2018, but in your 12th house. And a lot of you might have had a lot of epiphanies during that time of your fears and like what holds you back, self-sabotaging thoughts and behaviors, the ways in which you were playing small. And now with Uranus in your first house, it's kind of like I am the disruptor. I am the change that I want to see. I am the little revolutionary in my neighborhood. I am the person I've been waiting for. I am my ancestors' wildest dreams. That's what Uranus in the first house does to somebody. So get ready for it. But now it's going retrograde and it's going to go back into your 12th house. And I don't remember exactly what month, I think November. So I'll talk more about this in November, but um, it's going to go back there to finish up that story and then come back into your first house next year. But please let me know how that transit has been for you. On September 7th, there is a total lunar eclipse at 2:08 p.m. Eastern Time at 15 degrees of Pisces. So if you have your midheaven in and around 15 degrees, this is a full moon. This is a closure, an ending of your career, what you're known for. A lot of Gemini risings might be pivoting their career. They might be finishing up one iteration or a job and doing something completely new. Some Gemini risings might be getting a promotion or like a next up level into their career. So let's say like, for example, you were like entry level at your job and now you're a manager. Now you're going to be upgraded to a manager. Wait, it's not upgraded, promoted to a manager. So this is a lovely eclipse. I mean, eclipses are really hard to say good or bad with anything in astrology, right? Or good or bad or lovely, because these are faded endings and beginnings. Like, and because they are kind of in your they're in your angular houses. The angular houses are 1, 4, 7, and 10. As a result of one area of your life changing, let's say your career, your family life is going to change. You're going to change. Your partnerships are going to change. They're all kind of like speaking to each other. So the reason why I like this though, out of the two eclipses this month, is because the ruler of this lunation, which is a Pisces moon, is ruled by Jupiter in Cancer. Jupiter is in its exaltation in Cancer, and it's in your second house of your personal finances, resources, and income. And the moon and Jupiter they have mutual reception with each other, which means that the moon is in Jupiter's sign and Jupiter is in the moon sign. So there is some like luck. There's some like luck involved with this. So let's say you get fired from your job. And yeah, that really sucks because you were dependent on this source of income to come in, right? In the moment, you're like, what the hell? Like, how am I going to pay my bills? But because this is a North Node eclipse, and because, like I said, there's mutual reception between the moon and Jupiter, something better is trying to come into your life. So it's almost like you have to surrender to the unknown. You have to surrender to the blank space because something else is trying to make itself be known to you. And I know that's really difficult. We live in capitalism where you have to make money to live here. But just try to remember this as this is happening. If this is happening to you, just remember that Saturn is also here, and Saturn is the Lord of karma. So whatever work you've been putting in, you will get back in kind. Okay, I already mentioned September 13th, the Mercury Cazimi, which is really lucky. I would circle that date in your chart. Then we have September 18th, Mercury will ingress into Libra, which is your fifth house. This is your chart ruler. And I really like this because the fifth house is the house of good fortune in astrology. So the fifth house is romance, it's pleasure, it's joy, it's sex. It is all the things in life that make it worth living. So when your chart ruler goes into the fifth house, this is like, let me take myself out on a date. Let me mingle. Let me see who else is out there. Maybe this is a time where you like dust off your dating apps and try to meet people. If you are in a long-term relationship, this could also just be like going on dates and sparking up your relationship. But this is really lovely. I think you should take advantage of this time. On September 19th, Venus will ingress into the sign of Virgo, which is your fourth house. Now, Venus is in its fall here, which means like, it doesn't mean it's bad or anything like that. I think of planets in their detriment or fall as like immigrants. They don't know the language, they don't know the culture, they don't know the customs. So they have to kind of be scrappy and learn along the way. They're kind of like, what is going on here? But Venus and Virgo, you might feel compelled to like clean your home, get rid of clothing, purging your closet, for example. Or even, yeah, just like clearing space because Venus rules things like clothing, beauty products, purses, bags, jewelry. And with the South Node here, you might feel compelled to do a lot of purging, giving your clothes and items to Goodwill, making space in your home. On September 21st, there is a solar eclipse at 3:54 p.m. Eastern time. So please adjust for your time zone at 29 degrees of Virgo. So if you have your IC in and around 29 degrees, this is a new moon solar eclipse. However, this is a South Node eclipse. So something is being released. Something is purging here. Now this new moon is a little less friendly, I would say, just because it will oppose Saturn and Pisces in your 10th house. So I would say to Gemini risings, you might get into a conflict with a boss, like a Saturnian figure, a boss, a manager, somebody who's like, no, you cannot have time off with your family. Maybe you and your family want to like go on vacation or something or do something, and your boss is like, absolutely not. Or if you don't have a boss, something about your family life is kind of because a family member might be sick or an elderly person in your family might need attention. It's kind of preventing you from going, doing the things that you need to do for your career, perhaps. So, I said the same thing to Sagittarius risings, who is the opposite sign of you, and they're having eclipses in the fourth and 10th house as well. Um, just now, this isn't going to resonate for all Gemini risings, but just be careful, especially, I mean, you can't be careful, right? If it's someone's time to die, you can't control that, right? That's why I say, like, with these transits, none of us can really predict with astrology what is going to happen. But if you have your IC in and around 29 degrees, and with Saturn there in your 10th house opposing it, some Gemini rising, some might lose an elderly person in their family because Saturn also rules your 8th house of death. So, not all these transits. This could also be a metaphorical death of some kind. Maybe you decide, hey, I'm going to not work at this job anymore and I'm going to move abroad or something like that. On September 22nd, Mars will ingress into Scorpio in your 6th house. And out of all the signs, I really like this for you because Mars has its joy in the 6th. Mars does really well in the 6th. It has dignity in the 6th. So the 6th house is about your daily habits and routines that support your life. And the whole point of the 6th house is to work smarter, not harder. And that is what Mars and Scorpio really is about. It's really becoming focused, determined, and using your energy in ways that are sustainable. Of course, there is a shadow aspect to this. Mars and Scorpio people can become obsessive and overwork and jealous and paranoid, but you want to use this energy in a more productive way in what is it that what are your goals? I'll say this, since Saturn and Neptune were transiting your 11th house, which is your long-term goals, what are your goals and what can you feasibly do with at your energetic capacity and also within your means to do it? That's how I would use Mars and Scorpio in your 6th house. On the same day, the sun will ingress into Libra, and this is the fall equinox. And again, this is the 5th house when every Libra season. So you go from like a Virgo season, 4th house, which is kind of like heavy and it's all family focused, then 5th house, which is all fun and games and taking a risk and putting your heart out there. So I would take advantage of this time to focus on your art, your hobbies, things that bring you joy, and whatever you're going through with these eclipses, which I can't imagine for Gemini risings or any of the mutable rising signs to be easy in any capacity, to really focus on the things that can get you through. So that is your September. Thank you so much for being here. See you next month. Bye.